Coming up on this week's episode of Check Your Balances, we sit down with the one and only Chris Hill to talk about what's on his Thanksgiving table. Stick around, that's coming up next.
Check Your Balances is a show produced and owned by Craftwork Capital. The views expressed by the hosts and their guests are personal opinions and should not be considered personal financial advice or the opinion of Craftwork Capital. All investments have risk and may lose money. Consult with your financial advisor, tax preparer, or attorney prior to implementing anything discussed, and please do not use this show as the sole basis for financial decisions.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and welcome back to Check Your Balances. I am Ross Anderson, joined as always by my friend and co-host Dan Maseka. And this week, we've got a special guest with us. I believe our first-time repeat guest, which is a little bit interesting. That means every time we've had a guest on our show, it's been the first time, the first person that's been willing to come back. Chris Hill joins us this week. Chris, good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Pleasure to be here.
You know, you are fresh off a new audiobook, which is what we talked to you about last time we had you on the show. Morgan's book just came out. You've done another one. How are you feeling? This is a new chapter for you.
I'm feeling good. I'm rested. My voice is rested. I'm not going to lie. The first day I had a recording session, it was 4 hours long. And when I got home, I did not talk to my family for the rest of the night. I was just, my voice was shot and also my brain was kind of shot. But Morgan's new book, for those unfamiliar, Same as Ever, A Guide to What Never Changes. It's a great read. Highly recommend it to anyone. I think it's such a great follow-up to The Psychology of Money.
Was the recording experience any different than the first time around, or copy and paste?
It was similar from a preparation standpoint. The actual recording was a little bit different. This is through a different publisher, so they have a more involved process. There are a lot more people involved. And that included having a director, someone who was listening in every step of the way and every once in a while sort of jumping in and saying, hey, can you just take that line again? I think you might have mispronounced that word, or that word was plural and you dropped an S at the end. Can you just do that again? But other than that, yeah, great experience.
Well, coming from my seat of missing your voice on the Motley Fools podcast these days, I miss getting to have your calming presence while I'm in my car driving around talking about financial markets and what's going on in the world. It is a thrill to hear you again doing the podcast, doing the audiobook again. And I'm excited for you. I hope everybody checks it out either in print or the audio version so they can hear you do it.
Yeah, you've got time before the holidays. Put those orders in, get them ready for Christmas, Festivus, Hanukkah, whatever your holiday in your household is.
Particularly if you're traveling, which is, I imagine, how at least some of your audience is consuming this episode right now. They're traveling to their family's Thanksgiving. Maybe they're on the road. Maybe they're killing time in an airport. And hopefully we're helping to kill a little time with them.
That is what we're hoping to do here today. And we kind of, just as a very loose concept for the show, and this is probably going to wander, and that's okay. That's kind of what we wanted for today. Last year, we didn't even get an episode out really for Thanksgiving. We basically had to scrap one. So I already feel like we're ahead. But we were just thinking about the idea of what would you bring to Thanksgiving if you were bringing a personal finance concept. And my mind immediately went to the things that you shouldn't bring to Thanksgiving. And I think many families are in the same boat where they've had a crypto enthusiast that was pounding the table in 2021 about the virtues of Bitcoin and its brethren coins and how great they were going to be. That happened to be the month that Bitcoin peaked, was November of 2021. It's having a nice run so far this year, so perhaps recovering, but that's for a different topic. But what are some of the conversations? Have you guys gotten really terrible financial advice at a family gathering? Has that come up?
Yes. One very specific time came to mind. And I don't know if it was really terrible advice. It had a pretty terrible outcome. It's actually someone whose financial advice I think is very good most of the time. I respect him a lot. And we were just talking about stocks, and he doesn't normally deal in stocks, but he asked me, hey, if you had to pick one thing that's going to double next year, what do you think it would be? And I don't think I answered the question, But then he offered up an answer from his side, and it happened to have been a stock that I was looking at. I was like, oh, he thinks this is the next hot thing. This was on my watch list already. I mean, that's all I needed. I'm going in. I bought. It didn't go so hot, but I was so confident because if he was confident, I was confident. I doubled down, and it's one of the 2 stocks that have ever gone to zero for me. That was
I mean, if it's no longer investable, you can probably mention it here. What was it?
It was Horsehead Holdings, good old Zinc. I was so excited about that as a value play, and his readings and my readings didn't overlap. He had that idea independent of anything that I was looking at. I was like, that's testament to what I have to do here.
That's a scary confirmation bias because it feels so much like a lock at that point that you're like, well, yeah, other people are seeing this, but it's still under the radar.
I was just going to say, for me, it's less advice and it comes more in the form of questions, but it's questions about things kind of like you were saying, Ross. It's question about like this hot new thing. It's like, so it's not people who want to talk to me about investing or, general principles or mindset. But when they do bring it up, it's like, hey, what do you think about these marijuana stocks? I mean, it's legalization everywhere. I mean, it's got to pay off, don't you think? It's like,
time to load up.
Time to load up. Oh, yeah, that's happened almost like clockwork. I would say every 3 or 4 years, just some hot new thing. And I get it. It makes sense because it's the time when whatever is the hot thing in business is so hot that it bleeds over into other news cycles. But yeah, it's never good.
I mean, is that AI this year? How many earnings calls for companies that don't do a single thing related to AI are they talking about their use of AI in their systems? That's happening a lot right now.
It is happening a lot. And I go back and forth on it because on the one hand, it just seems so nakedly transparent for businesses that are not really in the center of that world. On the other hand, why not? Why not just drop it and say, hey, it's something we're exploring. It's something we're thinking about.
Yeah. And I mean, last year it was the metaverse, which was a stretch for so many companies. I just remember everything was opening up a shop in the metaverse. It's like, well, you could buy Nikes in the metaverse now. So, I mean, that's the meta play for 2020.
You're going to buy real estate in the metaverse, which maybe that's the better place to have it because real estate in the actual universe isn't doing that great either. But yeah, it's the metaverse was another phenomenal one. I think NFTs were in that category. That was kind of part of the crypto buzz. But there are some conversations that are perhaps productive to have around the dinner conversation of your Thanksgiving. What would you actually bring that would be productive? What would be useful to share? Something that would be helpful if you were talking about it with your family and friends, even if it's not as sexy as AI, crypto, or the metaverse.
So I'll just offer up that the Thanksgiving I go to every year with my family, there are about 40 people at my sister's house. So it is very much a team effort. It is very much everyone is bringing something, whether it's a side dish or a dessert or beverages, that sort of thing. So to your point, Ross, in the mindset of, well, what are you bringing to the table in terms of a financial conversation? I'm just going to talk about, for one second, I'm bringing to the table dividend-paying stocks. And this is something that came up last month. I was at Boston College speaking to the investment club. It was about 150 students. And one of the questions I got from the students was about, if you could go back, what would you tell yourself? And I said, look, the temptation is always to answer this question with something like, well, I would have bought Microsoft when it went public in 1986. But that's not realistic. But I think what is more realistic and what I was trying to impart to them was, I wish I had taken a closer look at dividend paying stocks earlier in my investing life. It's something I do more now. And obviously I'm older now, but in my defense, and I think this is something that maybe older listeners of yours will nod along to, there was a good stretch of time where a company paying a dividend was seen as crossing a threshold of some sort. You go back 10, 11 years, one of the biggest debates about Apple as a company was, are they going to pay a dividend? What will it mean if they pay a dividend? Well, the growth days are over, and now they're an old, boring company like GE or something like that. And that stigma, and I will use the word stigma, that doesn't really exist anymore. So I'm bringing dividend-paying stocks to the table and encouraging everyone around the table to use that as a filter when they're looking for investment ideas.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of that stigma has gone away after the sting of the growth cycle of a couple of years ago, and people are more excited about dividends than they've ever been before. I'll tack something onto that I never thought I would say since, a decade ago is money market funds. I mean, in working with a lot of people individually, they're still accumulating balances at these big banks that are paying 0.07%, holding the cash they need to, maybe a little bit more. But there are money market funds paying over 5%. So you don't have to take any additional risk to get, I don't know, many multiples of that return and actually seeing real dollars hitting your account on a monthly basis. I would be singing the praises of money market funds at whatever major broker you happen to do your investing with, and just advocating for taking some cash away from the big banks and getting more for your money.
All right, so I'm going a different direction with it because I'm not going financial product here. I'm going permission to spend. And what I mean by that is that we talk a lot on our show about savings rate. And I think that is the best way to evaluate whether you're doing enough. If you're saving 15% of your income towards retirement, towards your long-term goals, you are probably on track for a normal aged retirement. Let's call it 65-ish. If you're doing more than that, you could be accelerating that. You might be able to retire early. Whether that's your goal or not, that's up to you. But let's go ahead and say that that's kind of our benchmark for where you should be on a regular savings trajectory. If you are pinching pennies and going beyond that, and you're into, well into the 20+% savings rate, I'm going to challenge you to spend a little bit of money. Have some fun. Figure out what that number should be for you as a target, and give yourself permission to live freely beyond it. I think so much of the financial planning commentary is about save more discipline. And it is very true that for many people, for the average American, that's probably what they need to hear. But for the average listener of a show like ours, people that are into finance, I suspect we've got some very good savers in our audience. And I'm going to push you to go the other way. Create a memory. Do something with your family this year that is memorable, not reckless, but if you are doing the things that you should be doing from a financial perspective to put yourself in that position of strength, go have some fun. Take the fingers off the purse strings, so to speak, and do something enjoyable with your money.
That's a lot less wet blanket than most of the financial things I was considering.
Well, by definition, this show was like, what's the most boring thing we could bring up at Thanksgiving dinner in finance? And how do we get people excited about that? That's almost the entire purpose of our show, by the way.
Yeah.
How can we put out 20 to 30 minutes of content every week where the core theme is, hey, you know what you should probably do? You should probably save a little money. That's a good idea. Hey,
have you heard about a little thing called health savings accounts?
Right.
The limit went up this year. Have you checked your contribution rate?
It's a new week. You think we want to talk to them about saving money? How about next week we talk about saving money? Yeah, that's basically the theme of our show. So yes, I believe that by definition, our show is kind of like, hey, let's eat your vegetables. So yes, if I can give some advice that counters that and makes people feel good about spending something on a fun memory, I'm here for it.
Dan, that expanded limit on the health savings account, was that fueled by AI? Because now I'm interested.
I'm sure it was. The IRS has a large budget now. I guarantee they're investing in AI.
I guarantee they're not. I don't think they even have enough money to pay their people. And they're being defunded constantly. Yeah, I doubt that they've got a lot of AI going on at the IRS right now.
No, but they did roll out a self-filing system for taxes in a couple states, which, hey, we've always talked about how unnecessarily complicated taxes are. If they can get that going, that's one thing I can get behind.
You know who did make an investment recently, and I have not logged in since this, but I have heard that the Treasury Direct website has been improved because we made fun of it back when we did our iBonds episode, that you had to like click to like enter on the keyboard. It was literally like with your mouse, you had to select the letters. It was just this ridiculous process to get into Treasury Direct. I believe that's gone. I have not verified that myself, but I did see an article that they had fixed that.
I mean, just letting people use actual keyboards as opposed to what you just explained, that seems like a massive leap forward.
What an upgrade.
I think, was it one of us was having trouble getting in there, and we're like, can we just drive down? Like, if this is going to be such a big deal, can I just hand you this piece of paper?
Yeah. Can I give you my money in person? I live close.
It says direct. I can make it very direct for you. I don't think they want that, for whatever it's worth. If anyone needs to hear this, I'm pretty sure they don't want you showing up.
So, Chris, it sounds like your Thanksgiving gathering you said it's a large one. What is the actual dish that you bring? Do you have a specialty that you bring? Is it something consistent every year? Or what is your actual food contribution to this?
So my actual food contribution is that one of my daughters is a very good baker. And so I bring her, and she bakes a couple of pies.
Okay.
That's my contribution.
Is that consistent? Is it like pumpkin every year, or does she mix it up?
She has a couple of pies that were a very big hit the first year she made them, and that was about 10 years ago. And the following year, leading up to Thanksgiving, she was saying, well, maybe I'll do something different. And I just said to her, oh, no, you can't do anything different. I'm sorry. Like, people loved what you made, and now you need to make these pies for the rest of your life.
That happens to restaurants too, right? Like, you find the thing that you like, and even though you've got these really creative people that want to keep doing new stuff, people are like, well, where's the thing I had last time? And they get like mad when it's not there.
That's what I said to her. I said, look, if you want to make I literally said to her, I think she was, by the way, 12 years old when I said this to her. I said, look, if you want to make a third pie, you can mix it up. But these are home runs. You got to deliver you got to play the hits.
Oh, man.
I'm in your camp for whatever it's worth. I think those pies have to be eternal now. That is Thanksgiving.
I would be on team new pie. I am way into variety, and my Thanksgiving celebration is very similar from year to year, and we are not allowed to contribute. That is generally unwelcome as far as I understand it. I would love to cook something, because that's been something I've done the last couple of years, has gotten into my cooking a little bit. But as far as I know, they're kind of like, yeah, we got it. So that's handled. Whatever you're doing at home, that's cool. Enjoy yourself. But we're going to go ahead and handle the adult food. Thanks.
That's funny.
Nothing like family.
Yep.
I think it's not Thanksgiving, but during our family celebrations during holiday times, I feel like we have the opposite of what Chris has going on, where there is an eternal dish that I just wish would go away. For a lot of the Jewish high holidays, there's always herring on the table. And you know what? There were a lot of people who used to eat that herring. Now it sits there, and I feel like it's there just because it's been there. And I don't think anyone's going for it anymore. Just the next generation did not embrace the herring. And I don't know who's going to step up and say, listen.
Is it pickled herring, or is it fresh herring?
Well, it's usually in a couple forms, and none of it gets touched. And I know there are people who embrace it. I am not one of those people. None of the generation of mine in my family are going for the herring. I think it's time.
This pokes at my Finnish roots, because the Finns eat a lot of herring too. And I can deal with some of it, but when the herring comes out, I'm headed for the door. I'm ready to leave. Thanks for having me. The party's been nice. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I've never seen herring at my family's Thanksgiving, and I don't know that I ever will. So I'm happy with just sort of the traditional turkey, stuffing, gravy, and in my case, more stuffing.
Well, Chris, that's how you get out of bringing something next year. You botch it bad enough that people go, well, that's that guy. We're never going to have him bring anything ever again.
No. You're good. You're traveling.
You put it on a cracker. It's fine. Yeah. No.
Well, yeah. My family comes from very interesting backgrounds, and we've started going to my in-laws for Thanksgiving now for the more traditional take on the holiday.
All right. I think we brought this up last year, but I'm going to ask it again. Chris, is mac and cheese a Thanksgiving food? Does that belong on the Thanksgiving dinner table?
You guys did bring this up last year. I remember this. And I think you got, am I correct that you got like a hot take email from a listener who was just like, no, it definitely isn't, like, it doesn't belong there.
So that's one of the trainers at the gym that I go to. And he spends the entire month of November campaigning against mac and cheese at the Thanksgiving dinner table. It's like a bit at this point that he's doing on it not being acceptable. I think mac and cheese is wonderful. So it is welcome at my table any day out of the year, Thanksgiving included.
I agree with that. It is not part of my family's tradition, but if someone decided to just show up with some homemade mac and cheese, I think that would go quickly. Like there, part of the system that we have, and it truly is a system because my sister and my oldest brother are very organized people, and they sort of have been handling hosting duties over the last decade plus. They keep a file on what is consumed every year so that they can track things. Like, well, you know what? We seem to be drinking less alcohol as a group, so maybe we don't need to have 2 cases of wine, that sort of thing. And I think from a side dish standpoint, something that has been reduced is mashed potatoes. Like, I think mashed potato, like one year there was just an enormous amount of mashed potatoes left over.
So does your family do mashed potato and sweet potato?
No, it's usually just mashed potato.
Just mashed potatoes. Yeah, because I think we do sweet potatoes. I don't think we do mashed potatoes. And I love mashed potatoes. But yeah, I don't dislike sweet potatoes, but
I love them too. I just can't eat a whole tray by myself.
Sure. Yeah, no, within reason.
I'm just blown away that your sister keeps a file for this kind of thing. I barely keep files on the things I should keep files on.
You're going to turn the AI on that file one day, and it's going to chart exactly how much mashed potato you're going to need 50 years from now at that family gathering based on the data.
That would be a great application of AI.
Yeah, why can't we have AI working on important stuff like that?
Yeah. What should we be bringing as sides 20 years from now? Please tell me that. That's what we're going to figure out with the AI.
Yeah, spit it out into the exact recipe for the quantity I need, please, and thank you.
Look, technology is going to change a lot over the next 20 years. Here's what's not going to change. People are going to be eating mac and cheese.
So we're going to cover Morgan's book in more depth. This is a spoiler alert, by the way. He has agreed to come back on our show. So even though you beat him as the second guest, he has agreed to come back. We have not set a date for that. It's probably not going to happen for a couple months. But for anybody that has made it to this point in the show, you can know now that Morgan has agreed to come back, at least in principle. So I don't want to give away too much of his book, but that's basically the premise. What isn't going to change, right? I mean, that's essentially how he opens is, yeah, if you wanted to pick what's going to change in the next decade, the truth is it's probably going to be a ton of stuff. Almost everything. Picking the things that won't is probably harder of what's actually going to stay the same. And I love that as a concept. And I am not all the way through it yet, but just loved the beginning and where it's going.
Yeah. And, early in the book, he uses Jeff Bezos as an example, and Bezos talking about, I get this question all the time. And by the way, the question makes sense, particularly for investors who are interested in stocks. It's a natural question to say, well, what's coming next? Whether it's evolutions of technology, or even if it's just a basic retail business that you're looking to, you're hoping they're going to have better results next year and the year after that. So it's a natural question. But a very underrated, powerful question is what's not going to change? Because once you know that, then you can start directing your resources. And in the case of Bezos and Amazon, here's what's not going to change. Our customers want low prices and they want stuff delivered to them quickly. So once you know that, when you're running that company, you can start allocating resources directly. I'll just share one insight from the book that I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I did read the book several times, and it's how cyclical things are. And in the world of investing, we talk about specific industries as being cyclical. Well, housing is cyclical. Well, the energy industry is cyclical. And when you read this book, you can't help but come away with the conclusion like, no, there's a lot more than just housing and energy that's cyclical. And for investors who have the ability to be patient, the rewards are absolutely going to come. But you have to have the patience.
Well, yeah, and in that lens, you could almost ignore the cyclicality, right? I mean, if you're basically looking at it going, well, is this a good time for technology stocks? If you're going to be a technology investor for the next 20, 30 years, who cares whether the next 6 months is good for these stocks and whether the momentum and the favoritism in the market is there? That's very difficult because people don't like taking the loss over any time period if that's what's going to be the opposite result. But I do think that that's the challenge. Is there's an element of like, yeah, we talk about all this stuff and then you can get spun up about, well, what should I be doing now because of this environment? But if you're thinking in those really long lenses, it almost doesn't matter, right? Just buy the thing that you think will be, as Warren Buffett says, that you could basically go to sleep for a decade and you'd be happy to own it.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's what I like about Morgan's writing so much, because it puts everything into context so well, because the biggest risk in investing is yourself. And if you don't understand the role that your behavior plays in your investing outcomes, you can find yourself on the bad end of that every time.
Absolutely. And I think that, one of the things this book does is illustrate just numerous examples, both in terms of individuals, but also sort of historical events and how they've shaped our world, how people react to them, and how they're probably always going to react to them. Like that, that sort of emotional response, like that's going to happen. This is another question that came up when I was speaking at Boston College, just about dealing with loss, dealing with rough markets. You think of just how, you guys know how challenging 2022 was for investors. And one of the things I said was, I would love to tell you that when you get old enough and experienced enough, that it doesn't hurt and you don't feel the pain. That hasn't been the case for me. Like, I still feel the pain. Now, I have more experience and I know that I'm going to get through this and the market's going to get through this and patience will be rewarded. But in the moment, it still kind of hurts.
Yeah. What was the general mood in that room? You hear a lot about young people. I'm sure some of it's true, some of it isn't. But was that a fairly optimistic group of young people that were at the start of their careers? Kind of what was your general takeaway from getting to spend some time with them?
I was very impressed with them because, and I said this to them, I said, I wouldn't have been here on a Monday night when I was, when I was in college. I wasn't doing what you're doing. So the fact that they're there and they're this interested and they're looking to be involved in their own financial lives, and some of them want to make a career of it, and I think some of them are just looking to get involved in investing sooner rather than later. Most of the questions I got were framed in an optimistic way, in a productive way. Some of them were career oriented. And how do you make big decisions? How do you find mentors in your professional life when you're just starting out, that sort of thing. But in general, all of the questions were framed really well.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. And good on you for both being invited and for taking the time to do that. I know that's not exactly around the corner for you from your home, right? So heading up to Boston to speak is a task. And we appreciate your time coming on this show. You've been a tremendous friend to us. Our last episode together, I think, was mostly us gushing over how much we appreciate you. So I've been trying to hold that back this time around, but we are very thankful, and it's the good time of year for that to be.
I love your show. You guys do such a great job. It's the first podcast I listen to when the episode drops on Wednesday. So I know, because we've talked about this before, that sometimes it is a challenge coming up with topics when you're doing a show on a regular basis. And I know I'm not the only listener who appreciates that you guys deliver the goods week in and week out.
Well, have a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for being here. For all of our other listeners, if you've got things that you would like to hear us weigh in on, check your balances at outlook.com is the email address for our show. What's the best thing you eat on your Thanksgiving table? I want to hear from you. What are the sides that everybody is fighting over? Send us your thoughts. We'll catch you all next week.